London, 1852. The roses in the Kensington Garden had begun to bloom early that year, their petals unfurling like secrets long kept. Nestled among them, a slender figure in grey moved with practiced stealth, her fingers trembling as she placed the letter beneath a stone at the base of the marble fountain. Miss Kincaid. Naomi Kincaid straightened so abruptly she nearly toppled backward into the rosebushes. Her heart thundered against her ribs as Lady Harrington approached, the older woman's face pinched with disapproval. "I've been searching everywhere for you. The children have been without supervision for nearly half an hour. Whatever are you doing out here alone?" Naomi smoothed her governess uniform, hoping her employer wouldn't notice the ink stains on her fingertips. "Forgive me, my lady. I was merely taking a moment to admire the roses." Lady Harrington's gaze flicked to the stone at the base of the fountain, and for one horrifying moment, Naomi feared the corner of her letter was visible. "The Duke of Thornfield will be joining us for dinner tonight," Lady Harrington said. "I expect the children to be on their best behavior. And you as well, Miss Kincaid." "Yes, my lady." As Lady Harrington turned to leave, Naomi released a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. If anyone discovered her letters, if he discovered them, it would mean the end of everything. William Beaumont, the Duke of Thornfield, was not a man accustomed to intrigue. He had inherited his title at the age of 26 following his father's untimely death, and in the 4 years since, he had conducted himself with the staid responsibility expected of his position. He managed his estates, made prudent investments, and attended to his parliamentary duties. He did not indulge in the scandalous behavior of many of his peers. And yet, for the past 3 months, he had been party to the strangest correspondence. The letters began appearing on his morning rides, tucked beneath a stone by the fountain in Kensington Gardens. At first, he'd assumed they were misplaced, but the elegant script that addressed him as "My dear Duke" suggested otherwise. The letters contained no signature, no clue as to the writer's identity. They spoke of poetry and philosophy, of art and music, of the changing seasons and the beauty of the gardens. They were thoughtful, eloquent, occasionally witty. Most surprising of all, they seemed to expect no response. For reasons he could not fully explain, William had not mentioned the letters to anyone. He told himself it was because they were harmless, because there was no need to create a fuss over what was likely some lonely lady's innocent pastime. But as he dressed for dinner at the Harringtons, he knew this wasn't the entire truth. The letters had become a peculiar brightness in his otherwise predictable life. He found himself looking forward to them, wondering what observations his mysterious correspondent might share next. "Will you be requiring anything else this evening, Your Grace?" his valet inquired, adjusting the Duke's cravat. "No, thank you, Harrison." "Very good, sir. The carriage is waiting whenever you're ready." William nodded, his thoughts already turning to tomorrow morning's ride and the possibility of another letter waiting beneath the stone. Naomi had never been permitted to dine with the family when guests were present. Instead, she took her meal early with the children before retreating to her small room in the East Wing. Tonight, however, Lady Harrington had summoned her to the drawing-room after dinner. "The Duke has expressed interest in the children's education," she'd explained with obvious pride. "You are to report on their progress." And so Naomi found herself seated uncomfortably on the edge of a velvet settee, her hands folded in her lap as she answered the Duke's polite inquiries about his young cousin's studies. "Young Master Henry has a remarkable aptitude for mathematics," she said, careful to keep her gaze respectfully lowered. "And Miss Charlotte's French pronunciation improves daily." "I'm pleased to hear it," the Duke replied. His voice sent a tremor through her, deep and resonant, with the cultured accent of one educated at Oxford or Cambridge. Naomi risked a glance upward. William Beaumont was not what society would consider handsome in the classical sense. His features were too strong, his brow too heavy for conventional beauty. But there was something compelling in his steady grey eyes and the thoughtful set of his mouth. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and carried himself with the easy confidence of a man who had never needed to question his place in the world. In that moment, as his gaze met hers, Naomi felt the full folly of her actions. What madness had possessed her to write to him? What delusion had allowed her to believe that a man of his standing would find value in the thoughts of a penniless governess? "Miss Kincaid is being modest," Lady Harrington interjected. "The children have flourished under her care. We were most fortunate to secure her services after the unpleasantness at her previous position." Naomi's cheeks burned. Of course Lady Harrington would allude to the scandal that had forced her to flee the Radcliffe household, the scandal that had nothing to do with her conduct and everything to do with Mr. Radcliffe's unwanted advances and his wife's subsequent jealousy. "I'm sure Miss Kincaid's qualifications speak for themselves," the Duke said, his tone suggesting a disinterest in household gossip. Naomi risked another glance at him and found him studying her with unexpected intensity. "You enjoy literature, I understand," he said. Her heart stuttered. Yes, Your Grace. When my duties permit." "Any particular favourites?" "Wordsworth," she answered before she could stop herself. "And Keats." Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition? In her most recent letter, she had included a passage from Keats's Bright Star. "Excellent choices," he said simply, but his gaze lingered on her face for a moment longer than necessary. When she was finally dismissed, Naomi fled to her room, her mind racing. Had he recognized her handwriting? Did he suspect? No, it was impossible. He had no reason to connect the anonymous letters with a governess he had met only once. Still, sleep eluded her that night. When the household finally quieted, she lit a single candle and reached beneath her mattress for the leather-bound journal that contained drafts of all her letters to him. With trembling fingers, she began to write. "My dear Duke, I saw you today, though you cannot know me. I sat across from you, answering your questions, while my heart beat so loudly I feared all might hear it. I must say, Thornfield, you seem distracted today." Lord Preston leaned back in his chair, swirling brandy in his glass. "Parliament not stimulating enough for you?" William smiled thinly at his friend across the table in his club's private dining room. "My apologies. I've had much on my mind lately." "Estate matters? Or has some fair maiden finally captured your interest?" William's thoughts immediately turned to the letters, and unexpectedly, to the Harringtons' governess. There had been something in her eyes when she'd mentioned Keats, something that had stirred his curiosity. "Nothing so dramatic," he replied. "Though speaking of maidens, I understand congratulations are in order. You and Miss Elliot." Preston's face brightened. "Ah, yes. The announcement will appear in tomorrow's Gazette. She's a wonderful girl, good family, excellent dowry." "And do you love her?" William asked, surprising himself with the directness of the question. Preston blinked. "Love? Well, I suppose I'm fond enough of her. She's pretty and agreeable. What more could a man ask?" "What indeed?" William murmured. Later, as his carriage carried him home through London's fog-shrouded streets, William contemplated his friend's impending marriage. It was typical of their class, a sensible match based on compatible backgrounds and financial considerations. His own parents' marriage had been arranged similarly, though they had grown to care for each other over time. Yet something about it left him cold. Perhaps it was the letters with their passionate descriptions of art and nature, their unguarded emotions. His mysterious correspondent wrote of seeing the world with such feeling, such intensity. Beside that, Preston's fond enough seemed a pale shadow of what might be possible. The next morning, William rose early for his ride. The air was crisp, the gardens nearly empty as he approached the fountain. His pulse quickened as he dismounted and saw a folded paper beneath the stone. He opened it eagerly, his eye scanning the now familiar handwriting. "My dear Duke, I saw you today, though you cannot know me." The letter described their meeting, but from a perspective he couldn't place. It spoke of his questions, of literature discussed. With a jolt, William realized the writer had been present at the Harringtons the previous evening. A servant, perhaps? A lady's companion? Or the governess? Miss Kincaid, with her downcast eyes and quiet voice. Miss Kincaid, who had come alive for just a moment when speaking of poetry. Could she be his mysterious correspondent? William carefully folded the letter and tucked it into his coat. For the first time since this strange correspondence began, he felt compelled to respond. Naomi approached the fountain with her heart in her throat. She had been reckless in her last letter, revealing too much. But the need to confess, even in this anonymous way, had overwhelmed her usual caution. As she reached for the stone, she froze. There, where she expected to find nothing, lay a folded paper. With trembling fingers, she opened it. To the Lady of Letters, you have shared your thoughts with me for months, while remaining a mystery. Your words have been a rare pleasure in days often filled with tedium and obligation. If you would continue our correspondence, I would be honored. But I confess a growing curiosity about the mind behind these letters. Perhaps one day you might feel secure enough to reveal yourself. Until then, I remain. Yours in anticipation. Naomi pressed the letter to her chest, her mind spinning. He had written back. The Duke of Thornfield had written back to her. The impropriety of it all crashed over her. She was no lady of breeding or fortune. She was a governess with a tarnished reputation and no prospects. To continue this correspondence would be madness. And yet, that night, she wrote again, pouring her heart onto the page. She told him of her love for teaching, of the joy she found in watching young minds unfold. She described the beauty of dawn breaking over the gardens, the patterns of light through the library windows, the scent of roses in the rain. What she did not tell him was her name. Over the weeks that followed, their correspondence flourished. His letters revealed a man thoughtful and principled, occasionally weighed down by the responsibilities of his position but possessed of a quiet humor she found increasingly endearing. He wrote of his concerns for tenants on his estates, his frustrations with political maneuvering in Parliament, his preference for Mozart over Beethoven. In return, she shared her thoughts on education, her love of literature, her dreams of one day traveling to Italy. She wrote more freely than she had ever spoken to anyone, protected by the anonymity of their arrangement. Until the day everything changed. I cannot believe you've never attended the Chelsea Flower Exhibition, Lord Preston said as he and William strolled through the elaborate displays. It's the social event of the season. You know I prefer my gardens without the accompanying crush of society, William replied dryly. Speaking of society, did you see the latest gossip in the Gazette? Apparently, Lady Radcliffe has been spreading tales about a former governess who tried to seduce her husband. Says the girl was dismissed without references and has likely insinuated herself into another household under false pretenses. William frowned. Sounds like malicious rubbish. Perhaps, but these stories usually have some grain of truth. Ah, look, the Harrington party. William followed his friend's gaze to where Lady Harrington stood with her children and their governess. Miss Kincaid was kneeling beside young Charlotte, pointing out something in one of the displays. As if sensing his attention, she looked up, her eyes widening as they met his. For a moment, neither moved. Then she quickly rose, murmuring something to Lady Harrington before stepping behind a large arrangement of roses. "Excuse me," William said to Preston, already moving toward where she had disappeared. He found her examining a display of orchids, her back deliberately turned toward the main path. "Miss Kincaid." She stiffened but did not turn. "Your Grace. I believe we have a mutual interest in horticulture." Now she did turn, her expression guarded. "Do we, sir?" "Indeed. I'm particularly fond of the roses by the fountain in Kensington Gardens." The color drained from her face. I should return to my charges, Your Grace." "Before you go," he said quietly, "I wonder if you might recommend any poetry about secret gardens. Keats, perhaps? Or Wordsworth?" Her eyes, wide and frightened, confirmed what he had begun to suspect. "Please," she whispered. "I meant no harm." Before he could respond, Lady Harrington's voice rang out. "Miss Kincaid! Charlotte is asking for you." "I must go," she said, nearly fleeing in her haste to escape. William watched her retreat, his mind racing. He had found his mysterious correspondent, and now he had no idea what to do about it. Naomi's hand shook so badly she could barely pack her few belongings. He knew. The Duke knew she had written the letters. By tomorrow, everyone would know. Lady Harrington would dismiss her without references. No respectable family would hire her. She would be ruined. A soft knock at her door made her jump. Miss Kincaid. It was Mrs. Winters, the housekeeper. There's a messenger downstairs with a package for you. Naomi followed the older woman downstairs, where a liveried footman waited with a small parcel wrapped in brown paper. Thank you, she murmured, taking it with trepidation. Back in her room, she unwrapped the package to find a book of Keats's poetry and a sealed letter. Dear Miss Kincaid, please forgive my forwardness this afternoon. I had no intention of causing you distress. Your letters have meant more to me than I can adequately express. They have been a window into a mind I find increasingly fascinating. I will be riding in Kensington Gardens tomorrow at dawn. If you would be willing to meet me there, I would be grateful for the opportunity to speak with you properly. If you choose not to come, I will understand, and you have my word that your secret will remain safe with me. Yours sincerely, William Beaumont. Naomi sank onto her bed, the letter clutched to her chest. He wasn't going to expose her. He wanted to meet her, to talk with her. The rational part of her mind warned that this could only end in heartbreak. A duke and a governess? It was the stuff of fairy tales, not real life. And yet, the thought of seeing him, of speaking freely with him after months of one-sided confessions, was too tempting to resist. Dawn found her waiting by the fountain, wrapped in her warmest shawl against the morning chill. When she heard hoofbeats approaching, it took all her courage not to flee. William dismounted gracefully, his tall figure silhouetted against the rising sun. For a moment, neither spoke. I wasn't certain you would come, he said finally. Nor was I, she admitted. Your letters. He began, then seemed to reconsider his words. You write beautifully, Miss Kincaid. Naomi, she said softly. If we are to speak of letters written without formality, perhaps you might call me Naomi. A smile touched his lips. Naomi, then. And I am William, at least here, away from the constraints of society. They walked slowly beside the rose bushes, the early morning mist wreathing their figures. Why did you write to me? He asked. Naomi hesitated, struggling to articulate feelings she had never intended to confess aloud. I saw you riding here one morning, looking solitary. I had just finished reading a volume of poetry that had moved me deeply. I thought perhaps you might enjoy it as well. She shook her head. It was presumptuous. Inappropriate. It was the kindest gift I've received in years, he said quietly. Their eyes met, and for a moment, Naomi allowed herself to believe that something miraculous was happening. Then reality reasserted itself. This cannot continue, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. You are a duke. I am a governess with a questionable reputation. If anyone saw us together like this, what do you mean, questionable reputation? Naomi looked away. I was forced to leave my previous position when the lady of the house accused me of improper behavior toward her husband. The accusation was false, but mud sticks, Your Grace, William. I was fortunate Lady Harrington was desperate enough for a governess to overlook the rumors. Is this connected to the gossip about the Radcliffes? She nodded miserably. Lady Radcliffe has been particularly determined to see me ruined. I suspect she learned I had found a new position. William's expression darkened. That is unconscionable. It is the way of the world. Those with power dictate the fate of those without it. He was silent for a moment, then said, I would like to continue our correspondence. How? I cannot keep leaving letters in public gardens. It's too great a risk. Then write to me directly, he said. I'll provide an address where you can send your letters safely. And if they were discovered? If Lady Harrington found out I was corresponding with you, I would lose everything. I would not let that happen. The conviction in his voice made her heart ache with a longing she dared not name. You cannot protect me from the consequences of my own actions, William. Our worlds are too far apart. Before he could respond, the sound of approaching riders made them both tense. William quickly led her behind a large oak tree, shielding her from view. I must go, she whispered. Will you write to me again? She hesitated, then nodded. Yes. But we cannot meet like this again. As she hurried back toward the Harrington house, Naomi knew she was walking a dangerous path. Yet she could no more stop herself from writing to him than she could stop her heart from beating. For 6 weeks, they continued their correspondence. William provided a discreet address, a bookshop whose owner owed him a favor, and Naomi wrote faithfully, pouring her thoughts onto pages she delivered during her weekly trip to purchase supplies for the children's lessons. William treasured each letter, reading and rereading her words until he knew them by heart. He found himself thinking of her at the most inappropriate moments, during parliamentary debates, at dinner parties, while reviewing estate accounts. He had never met anyone like Naomi Kincaid. Despite the hardships she had faced, her letters revealed an undiminished appreciation for beauty, a sharp intellect, and an empathy that humbled him. She saw the world with eyes unclouded by privilege or cynicism. You seem in unusually good spirits lately, his sister, Lady Catherine Reynolds, remarked one afternoon during her visit to his London home. I haven't seen you smile this much since before Father died. William shrugged, uncomfortable with her scrutiny. The weather has been favorable for riding. Catherine raised an eyebrow. The weather? William, you've been distracted and cheerful for weeks. It's most unlike you. Her eyes narrowed. Is there a woman involved? Don't be ridiculous. There is. Who is she? Someone from society, or? Her eyes widened. William, tell me you haven't taken a mistress. I have not taken a mistress, he said stiffly. And this conversation is entirely inappropriate. You're my brother. Your happiness is my concern. She studied his face. Whoever she is, she's brought life back to your eyes. I'm glad of it, even if you won't confide in me. Later that evening, alone in his study, William reread Naomi's latest letter. I watched the children playing in the gardens today and found myself envying their freedom. How wonderful to run without constraint, to laugh without fear of judgment, to live in a world where possibilities still seem endless. Do you remember such innocence, William? Before titles and expectations shaped your days? Sometimes I wonder who we might have been if born to different circumstances. Who they might have been. The question haunted him. In the world as it was, a duke did not marry a governess, certainly not one tainted by scandal, however unjustly. He was expected to make an advantageous match with a lady of suitable breeding and fortune. His family name, his vast estates, his seat in Parliament, all demanded he think beyond personal inclination. And yet, William pulled a sheet of paper toward him and began to write, words flowing more freely than they ever had before. My dearest Naomi, I find myself increasingly unable to imagine a future in which your letters, and you, are not part of my life. Miss Kincaid, a moment of your time. Naomi looked up from the French grammar she'd been reviewing to find Lady Harrington standing in the schoolroom doorway, her expression unreadable. Of course, my lady. She followed her employer to the morning room, her stomach knotting with apprehension. I received a most disturbing letter today, Lady Harrington said once they were seated. From Lady Radcliffe. Naomi's heart sank. I see. She claims you were dismissed from her household for attempting to seduce her husband. She warns me that you are a woman of low morals who should not be trusted with impressionable children. Lady Harrington's piercing gaze fixed on Naomi's face. What have you to say to these accusations? Naomi took a steadying breath. They are false, my lady. Mr. Radcliffe made unwanted advances toward me. When I rejected him, he told his wife I had attempted to seduce him. She chose to believe her husband rather than a governess. And you did not think to mention this when I hired you. Would you have believed me over the word of Lady Radcliffe? I needed the position desperately. Lady Harrington was silent for a long moment. The children are fond of you. Their progress has been remarkable under your tutelage. Hope flickered in Naomi's chest. Thank you, my lady. However, I cannot have even a hint of scandal attached to this household. You understand my position? Yes, my lady. Naomi's voice was barely audible. You will have 2 weeks to find a new position. I will provide a letter stating your competence as a teacher, but I cannot guarantee it will be enough to overcome Lady Radcliffe's accusations. 2 weeks. 14 days to secure a new position without references that would satisfy any respectable family. It was as good as a death sentence for her career. That night, Naomi wept as she wrote to William, confessing her predicament and her fears for the future. She had less than £5 saved, enough for perhaps a month's lodging in the cheapest boarding house, but not enough to sustain her while she searched for work. I do not write this to burden you with my troubles, she concluded. But I have come to think of you as a friend in whom I can confide. If our correspondence must end because I can no longer access the bookshop, please know that your letters have been a light in dark times. I will treasure them always. She signed the letter with trembling fingers, then slipped it into her journal for safekeeping until she could deliver it. The next morning brought chaos to the Harrington household. Young Henry had developed a fever during the night, and the doctor had been summoned. In the confusion, Naomi was sent to the garden to collect fresh roses for the sickroom, their scent believed to purify the air. She was carefully cutting the blooms when a shadow fell across the path. Looking up, she found herself staring into the grave face of the Duke of Thornfield. William, she gasped, forgetting propriety in her surprise. What are you doing here? I came to speak with Lady Harrington, he said. But I'm glad to have found you first. I received no letter from you this week. I was going to deliver it today. But why would you need to speak with Lady Harrington? Before he could answer, Lady Harrington's voice called from the terrace. Your Grace! What an unexpected honor! William straightened, his manner shifting to formal politeness. Lady Harrington. I apologize for calling without notice. Not at all. Please, come inside. Miss Kincaid, bring those roses to the housekeeper and then return to the schoolroom. Naomi curtsied, her mind racing as she carried the flowers inside. Why had William come here? What was he planning? An hour passed before Mrs. Winters appeared at the schoolroom door. Miss Kincaid, you're wanted in the drawing room. Naomi followed the housekeeper downstairs, her heart pounding. In the drawing room, she found Lady Harrington looking pale and William standing by the fireplace, his expression unreadable. Miss Kincaid, Lady Harrington said, her voice strained. His Grace has made an extraordinary request. He wishes to engage you as a governess for his ward, Lady Amelia. Naomi stared in confusion. Your ward, Your Grace? I was not aware you had a ward. My late cousin's daughter, William said smoothly. She has been living with my sister, but will soon come to stay with me. She requires a governess of exceptional qualifications. I see, Naomi said faintly, understanding dawning. He was creating a position for her, a respectable escape from her predicament. I have agreed that you may leave my employment immediately to take up this position, Lady Harrington said. Her tone suggested she found the situation highly irregular but could hardly refuse a duke's request. His Grace has offered most generous compensation for the inconvenience. You are too kind, my lady, William said. Miss Kincaid, if you would be so good as to gather your belongings, my carriage is waiting. An hour later, Naomi found herself seated across from William in his luxurious carriage as it rolled away from the Harrington house. You don't actually have a ward, she said once they were safely out of earshot. No, he admitted. But I do have a sister who has agreed to act as your chaperone until we determine a more permanent solution. William, what have you done? This deception was necessary, he interrupted. I received your letter this morning, delivered by the bookshop owner, who feared you might be in trouble. I could not stand by while you faced ruin for crimes you did not commit. Naomi shook her head, torn between gratitude and dismay. You cannot simply invent a position for me. What will society say? I care little for society's opinion. But I care about your reputation. Your standing. This impulsive rescue was neither impulsive nor merely a rescue, William said, his voice softening. Naomi, I have spent the past months discovering a mind and heart I cannot bear to lose. I did not create this situation to be your savior. I created it because I am selfish enough to want you near me. Naomi's breath caught in her throat. What are you saying? I'm saying that I love you. That your letters have revealed to me a woman of extraordinary intellect and feeling. That I wish to court you properly, with my sister as chaperone, and if you'll have me, to make you my wife. Your wife? Naomi whispered, certain she had misheard. William, you cannot marry a governess. Your family, your peers, can accept my choice or not, as they please. I am not my title, Naomi. I am a man who has found something precious and has no intention of letting convention steal it away. Tears filled her eyes. This is madness. Perhaps. Or perhaps it is the first truly sane decision I have made since becoming a duke. He took her hand gently. I don't expect an answer now. Only say you'll allow me to court you. Give us time to discover if what we found in letters can flourish in life. Naomi looked down at their joined hands. People will talk. Let them. A smile touched his lips. Though it might help if I could present them with a record of our correspondence. Something to show that our attachment is based on genuine understanding and mutual respect. My journal, Naomi said slowly. I've kept drafts of all my letters to you. A journal of love letters to a duke? It sounds like something from a novel. She laughed despite herself. Hidden under my mattress, no less. Now it's packed with my belongings. Then we'll retrieve it when we reach my sister's home. William lifted her hand to his lips. And perhaps one day, our grandchildren will read it and know how their grandfather fell in love with a lady who wrote secret letters and left them under roses. 3 months later, the morning edition of the Gazette carried an announcement that surprised all of London society. The Duke of Thornfield is pleased to announce his engagement to Miss Naomi Kincaid. The wedding will take place in June at the Duke's country estate. The scandal lasted precisely as long as it took for people to observe the couple together. Even the most cynical gossips could not deny the genuine affection between them, nor could they ignore the Duchess of Thornfield's intelligence and grace. As for Lady Radcliffe, she found her invitations to society events mysteriously dwindling after the Duke publicly recounted how his wife had been wrongfully maligned. On their first anniversary, William presented Naomi with a gift, her journal, rebound in fine Moroccan leather, with a single pressed rose between its pages. To remind us, he said, that the most beautiful things can sometimes be found hidden beneath roses. Or stones by fountains, she replied with a smile, rising on her toes to kiss the man who had found not just her journal, but her heart.